the recording started.
All right, we are in our last segment here where we're going to talk about explicit language instruction. And being a speech language pathologist, without a doubt, this is where I'm the most comfortable, where I enjoy what I'm doing the most. I love talking about descriptive talking, teaching, and testing, but I really love about doing explicit language instruction. So I hope for those of you out there that are also speech language pathologists that this will be a meaningful section for you. You know, explicit language instruction involves making sure with our kids with AAC needs, we're working on pragmatic discourse, of course, the reasons that we communicate, as well as the vocabulary, the semantics, the words, and then putting those words together, just syntax, and then putting those little endings on words, morphology. And, you know, truly each one of those things are deeply interconnected. And when I talk about explicit language instruction, it involves making sure that we're providing specific instruction, not just modeling, not just hoping it develops, but actually developing strategies, intervention strategies and materials and all sorts of supports that we need to make sure our kids are developing well-rounded language skills. And my current strategies to provide, and we're going to really spend our time primarily today on the vocabulary aspects of it, as well as the grammar parts of it. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time, if any, on the pragmatics parts of it, on the reasons to communicate, but that can be built into all of these other strategies. But when people ask me about how do you do vocabulary instruction, because the majority of AAC intervention, particularly when I get a chance to look at IEPs, are primarily focused on developing vocabulary. So when I want to look at vocabulary instruction, first off, I want it to be systematic, which means it's not spray and pray. I'm just not, grabbing a bunch of words today and I'm going to work on these today. I have a word list. I have that wall chart. That wall chart, again, becomes for me part of my system. Those are the words that I'm aiming to make sure I have provided instruction on. And I have frequently just run off a black and white copy of that chart. It's in my folder. It could be in the kids folder. But as I know I've done lessons and I can start checking them off, and as I've collected language samples on the student and been able to see what language are they using spontaneously, I can start checking off from that wall chart or from a word list the vocabulary that I see that they have learned and they're using, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. So I want to be both systematic as well as explicit. I'm not hoping that they'll just get it through modeling or learning it by exploring it on their own or getting it by seeing symbols I've placed around the room. I'm going to really do lessons, very explicit vocabulary instruction. And I have in my bag of tricks 6 probably strategies that I would say I've used. I've helped other therapists and teachers use. The first being word of the week or year of core vocabulary, which we're going to touch on. And then activity-based instruction. I've done activity. I could do 2 hours. I did last week a 2-hour webinar with folks on rock and roll therapy, which is all about using lyrics as a strategy for teaching vocabulary, particularly with adolescents and young adults. Some of you are into Book of the Month Club I've done with a bunch of adults at a facility, a day program for adults with severe and profound disabilities. We would pick up a book for an entire month, maybe Goldilocks and the Three Bears, or, Three Billy Goats Gruff. We did a lot of very simple literature, and for an entire month, we worked on language from within that book. I've done cooking-based instruction with Jonah, the young man who is using those alert method to messages. He was very much wanting to have me help him learn Torah. And so we developed a whole series of lessons that I started calling heart and soul lessons. Whatever the kid's interested in, whatever activity makes them excited to interact. So you could do word of the week, activity-based instruction happens a lot in the classroom. You've got arts activities, music activities, science activities. My third strategy is Grammar Rocks, where I really am focusing on learning vocabulary based on various different parts of speech. So we would do lessons on pronouns or lessons on prepositions. I also do this is an approach that is the most appropriate and applicable with kids who are using semantic-based AAC systems, such as the Unity program or LAMP Words for Life, because vocabulary is organized around semantic families. With Joshua, when he hit middle school and high school, I did a lot of stuff what I called stepping up. He knew his core vocabulary. He had mastered every word on that wall chart, but he still was struggling in his academics because he knew how to say the word say, but he didn't know how to say discuss, describe, explain, some of these other tier 2 more advanced verbs and adjectives he was learning. And then finally, for a while when he was in junior and senior, I had to do what I started calling just pass the class. I did everything I could with academic lessons to make sure he just passed that class so he would graduate. So there's lots of different strategies. You could probably plug in different things you're doing into one or more of these different kinds of categories. For today, I want to just cover a little bit about each one of them again in these different slides, and then spend some time looking specifically at word of the week. But with word of the week, you know, I want to just say that in each one of these things, you are systematically and strategically working through a list of words. And at word of the week, most people are working at a level where they learn a word and then maybe start combining those words together. And when you start dividing the words together, that 3S asterisk there means you're starting to do not just semantics, the meaning of the word, but some early things also with syntax and some things with other strategic communication. So you're learning, anytime you're working on vocabulary and you put one word with another word, you're starting to tap into combining into syntactical structures. And so the words that you work on in a word of the week or a year of core words are not just taught during a time in your schedule where you say, in this slot from 9:45 to 10:10, we work on word of the week things. No, that word, whatever's your word of the week, is going to be reinforced throughout the entire day and throughout the entire week. Most people who are doing word of the week or a year of core vocabulary, where they define what words are they going to teach throughout the entire year. And that year of core vocabulary, if you go look at some of the work by Dr. Carol Zangari, she has activity-based instruction could be some of the things I'm doing privately with my kids, where I'm very student-driven area of interest. For Jonah, it's studying Torah. For some of the other kids, it's cooking or art or books or music. But you're in a school, so your activity-based instruction could be could be curriculum-driven. But you still need to have a plan of a list of vocabulary that you know you're going to systematically work through, and then integrate those words from that activity throughout your school day. Grammar Rocks shouldn't surprise you. You're systematically and strategically working through those words, but this time by grammatical categories. And an advantage of this plan for teaching vocabulary is it naturally dovetails into understanding the architecture of the words in most robust speech generating devices. Most speech generating devices, whether they're a MinSpeak based system with combining multiple meaning icons, or they're a page based system where single meaning pictures are representing words across different pages, the reality is we need an architecture for organizing these words. And so in a page-based system, you may be navigating to a folder that takes you to pages of verbs, or a folder that takes you to pages of adjectives or prepositions or any other part of speech. And so in that approach, you're learning the architecture as well as the vocabulary. So you're learning how to be able to navigate through your system. And as always, you know, with Jordan, I was doing a lot of grammar rocks with him, and I have all of these boxes that I put together. So for example, maybe in his speech therapy time, he was working on prepositions. So this big plastic box has got all the stuff in it for different activities to work on prepositions. And after doing it in school for a while, then that box got also sent home. So I have a whole collection of different grammar rocks boxes in my closet that I could use in therapy time with me, leave with families at home, so that they could simply be playing with their kid, you know, learning. If you're playing, one of the games in my preposition box is Chutes and Ladders, because you're going up and down these different ladders and staircases when you play Chutes and Ladders. So all sorts of different things I could put in my box so that families could play at home, read books at home, do different games at home, and reinforce the vocabulary we're working on systematically in therapy. Then I mentioned icon family approach. It's learning by semantic groups of words. And again, I'm not going to go in a lot on this now because it's so specific to folks using MinSpeak based system. But you know, it would be like if you had a picture of an apple, and you're going to learn about all the ideas that the apple codes, like you're hungry, you're going to eat, it's food, and it's all based on semantic notions that symbol triggers. Stepping up, as I said, you're systematically working through the more advanced words. And this, if you're working on synonyms and antonyms to improve your students' vocabulary, if you're working on multiple and metaphoric meanings, you know, like smart dresser doesn't mean that you're an intelligent dresser. It means you're a cool dresser, a jazzy dresser. And as all the boys got in writing, had to do more and more writing in middle school and high school, we would often take a look at their very simple writing they did and say, well, you wrote, we talked about it. And that becomes, we discussed it, where we had to start learning beyond the 300 core words. What are other words they have in their device with increased rigor? Now, again, the percentage of kids that you may be supporting who can do this might be small. But for that small percentage for whom this is important, this can be a make or break thing between doing well in class and not doing as well, and being able to go on to do advanced education. There's a young woman I've supported. Her name is Fave. She is a college graduate. She loved when we were working on stepping up. She found it just enjoyable to learn sophisticated words. And she loved throwing out sophisticated words to people. To go up to somebody, particularly if somebody were treating her when she was in middle school or early high school, if somebody were treating her as if she was in a childish manner, she would go up to them and say, I'm a very loquacious person. How about you? And you would see that person's eyes get wide. and she thought, I bet I've impressed the pants off of them that I used that word loquacious, but I think maybe that person doesn't even know what that means. And she kind of elevated herself. And that was incredibly affirming and confidence building in her. And so I'm currently working on a lot of that right now with Joshua, who has a desire to go on to get further education at a community college, but he's struggling. And so we're working on increasing his vocabulary. For him, that's important. And then finally, I mentioned about pass the class, that not only were we working on maybe some lesson-specific words, but learning words like, what does it mean to describe? What does it mean to compare? Because he's getting assignments that say to him, you need to compare these two things. If he doesn't know that kind of instructional language, he's not going to be able to make it. And so we did a lot of that kind of work. You know, I would say that when we were just trying to get through some of his classes and I was saying, okay, show me the lesson for this week and I will help you get through it. I didn't feel like it was a very systematic way of addressing his vocabulary needs, nor was it a strategic way, but it did get him through the class. And just kind of addressing this right now, on Wednesday evenings, I'm a part of a group that's led by a AAC user by the name of Chris Klein. Chris Klein is a college graduate. He's got a degree in theology. And on Wednesday evenings, he runs a virtual Bible study online for AAC users. And the AAC users that come to his study have it runs the entire gamut, from folks who have been educated in the mainstream to kids who are in special education programs. There are people on the spectrum. It's just a total mixture of different kinds of AAC users. And Chris has asked me for my help in this group because he's putting lessons together which he thinks are simple. And in Wednesday's night's lesson, there was a lot of vocabulary that he was using in the asking of questions, and nobody's answering these questions because they don't have that kind of sophisticated vocabulary. One of the words was the word exalt, you know, and it's like they had no clue of what that word exalt means. And while Chris could easily explain it to them, you know, he uses his foot, a toe on his communication device. He calls upon me as his speech pathology support for this group to jump in at all those places where my eye sees that, you know, the vocabulary is beyond what these guys can recognize. So there's just a very simple example, way beyond the school environment, that takes what we do and applies it in another context in things that are meaningful to these young adults who are trying to integrate within not only their community of AAC users, but their general community where they live. So I throw that out as an example that never do we give up working on vocabulary and working one of these strategies to increase people's vocabulary skills. So let's go into a little bit more deeply, word of the week or a year of core vocabulary. And I'll just stop here and ask a question. How many of you, and so Libby or Karen who are looking at the chat window, how many of you are using word of the week? Just type, you know, just yes, I'm using, or yes, no, and just, I hope lots of yes, no's will fly across that chat window. If you or you know your teachers are doing word of the week or a year of core vocabulary.
We've got, yes, a number of yeses, so about half and half, yes, no.
All right. All right, good. So that gives me a sense there. You know, what I miss about not being able to do this live in a room with all of you there is that quick time I can just ask you and you raise your hands. So what I'm going to share with you is not the quintessential way to do word of the week. There's lots of different ways. We all bring our own personal style with it. But I'm going to suggest to you, I'm going to show you what I know has been the most widely successful WOW plans, word of the week plans. And they generally start, because we talk about systematic explicit instruction, by identifying their total number of total vocabulary. How many words in your word of the week are you hoping that your kids are going to be able to learn? So you got to figure out your total vocabulary plan. Some classrooms working with kids with significant disabilities might only in a school year cover 20 words. Some might cover 50 words. Some might get as many as 200 words, where when they're doing a word of the week, they're probably doing 2 or 3 words in a week. But it all starts by making sure you know what's your target vocabulary you're aiming for, so you can see where you're building towards. And some of those words, if I took my entire big wall chart and said, I'm going to teach these through word of the week, there are some words on that wall chart that I know I don't want to do a lesson on. Why would I ever want to do a lesson on the word the, and, or even the word it? Because I'm pretty confident that I can teach those through exposure and modeling and through a lot of other activity-based instructions. So I don't put them in any kind of specific word of the week or a year of core vocabulary instructional sets. I'm looking for the words that have some substance to them. So you create a plan to teach all those remaining words with explicit instruction. And you're going to always continue in your plan to model before and after and continue to use that recasting. If the kid gives you one word, you're going to recast afterwards, adding on another word, because you want to build in more syntax and sentence structure. Option 1. When I was working up and consulting in this school district outside of Chicago, they decided that they were only going to keep their word of the week at 1 word per week. These were programs with significantly impaired kids, many kids at the level of emerging communicators. So if they're going to do 1 word a week, they're probably going to cover in a school year approximately 25 to 30 words per year. Yet they had a big wall chart that they were hoping to cover 50 words eventually, that their benchmark of what they were hoping their kids would get to would be right around 50 words. So you know they're not going to get through all the words in 1 year. If they only get through 25, because as soon as you start taking away weeks where you're on holidays, and then you got those weeks in Chicago where you're going to be out of school because it's miserable cold, and then you got those weeks where you got a classroom with only 6 kids in with severe disabilities and 3 of them are out sick, you're going to have to repeat it the next week. We know all these variables come into play there, where in a school year, 25 words is probably what you're going to get through. But their plan is to cover all of those 25 words, that's set in 1 school year. And then the next school year, they're going to go on to the next set of 25 words and continue exposing students to the words of the previous year with all the modeling and all your classroom visuals. And then as necessary, you just keep repeating. Maybe you didn't get through them all. So they created multiple year plans that they had 50 target words or 60 target words. They're going to cover all of them over a 2 to 4 year period. They were in a program where kids were in their classrooms for 3-4 years. It was a program where it was all self-contained, organized by elementary level, then middle school level, then high school level. So yeah, you were going to be in that same classroom for a number of years. And if a new student came in, they just picked up right where they are in that cycle. And they just keep rotating it through. Option 2, if you want to cover more, if you want to get through all those words, you're working on, you got 50 or 60 words you want to learn, then you're going to have to do 2 a week, or 3 a week, or 4 a week. In this same program, there were other classrooms where kids had much higher skills. And so they worked on 3 or 4 year words per week. And then they could develop a single year plan or even a multiple year plan to make sure they're always targeting those words in a cycle through several years. But they try their very best to cover all their words that they wanted kids to learn in their set in a single year. All right. And again, you're going to have to just figure out, what do you do when you have to repeat another year and more kids come into your class? They just kept cycling through this as they saw fit. So in terms of planning considerations, it was working with this district for almost 2 years. I was up there every month for a week for 2 years helping them in their program. And we came up with a structure that worked for us that I'm sharing with you. I'm not saying it's the best structure. It worked for these guys. But we knew it as we were planning. We picked words and we taught words in our sequence based on what they partnered up with and paired well with. Because we knew we wanted to be making phrases in different combinations. And we knew that we wanted to teach in contrast pairs. So if 1 week we were teaching the word go, then probably soon after we would, somewhere close, we wanted to figure out what words are going to go with the word go. Go here, go there, go away. We figured out, let's not just teach a whole bunch of verbs altogether. We got to teach a verb and then another part of speech so that we can start making some combinations. And if we're going to teach an adjective like fast, maybe we can that week teach it in a contrast pairs, fast and slow, or go and stop should be taught in a contrast pair. We wanted to make sure with each word of the week, and in their program, sometimes for some of the classrooms, it was the word of 2 weeks. But in that week or 2 weeks time, at the end of this week, we would have created a word of the week poster or a word of the week bulletin board. So everything we're working on, I particularly liked the poster because we had something that stayed permanent after that week was done. The classrooms that wanted to use the bulletin board found that after 1 week, then they took all the week's word of the week stuff off the bulletin board, and then the next week they put other stuff that they didn't have anything that they could reference back to review unless they took a photo of it and had it, let's say, in a PowerPoint slide that they could look at. But they all wanted to be able to picture it, and they all created, as they were introducing a new word, a word wall. A word wall kept growing in their classrooms. We also always wanted to build in some things that would be very predictable, which meant we were basically going to do the same activities, the same routine every week. It simplified teacher planning. They knew what, they didn't have to think, what am I going to do on Monday? What am I going to do on Tuesday? Because we had a routine. But routine promotes student engagement. Students know what to expect. And you'll see as we go through that, how that helped them. Then we wanted to do some priming, that we would start modeling the words that would come in the next instructional block and start with letting the people know what's coming up, and then always informing the parents and whatever we could do to keep the parents involved. So I'm going to walk through some of these, our word of the week for a week. And for those of you who had been part of the stuff on the preschool things, this will be a repetition for you if you attended that workshop, because this is something we did a lot in the early education in the preschool classrooms. So in terms of partnering up and pairing up words, by the time we got to the word stop, we had already taught more and all done. And then we had taught put, so that could be combined with away and here and there. Then we taught help and good and bad. And now we're going to be teaching the word go. And we're going to be contrasting that with stop. So at this point, a lot of the students in these classrooms did not have speech generating devices. They were using low-tech communication boards. And we did simple things like making vocabulary masks, where we could cover up all the words except for the ones that we were already focused on in previous weeks. and which we were focusing on in the coming week. Some teachers like that. Some teachers prefer just to highlight the words that we would be using in an activity, but wanted kids to have access to all their other possible words. So that's a teacher judgment call, and any teacher could have done both things. Maybe cover up all the words except our target words for some activities, and then as they became more comfortable with the new words, expose the student to all the words on their manual boards. And some of that stuff can also be done electronically in our devices. I'm doing Word of the Week right now with a little 4-year-old that I've just started working with. And I use vocabulary builder masks within his AAC system. So I can say, well, now we're doing, he loves bowling. You know, just the plastic pin bowling you do. He loves throwing the balls at the pins. And so I set him up with only 4 or 5 words that we're going to be using for that bowling activity. And each time we've done that activity, each week I've exposed a new word for him. So he's learning that new vocabulary. He's working, he's an eye gazer. That's sort of still working on perfecting his eye gaze. So he doesn't have to deal with all his vocabulary and all his eye gaze during that explicit instructional time. All right, so then we also always have our poster. Our poster every week, the teachers know on our Word of the Week poster, they're going to have their color-coded symbol. So there's our symbol for the word go. It's on a green background because it's a verb, and verbs are green. We've got a color-coded printed word. So the symbol goes away because in this classroom, they really want to work on emerging literacy. The word are on these different phrase cards. So there's a subject verb, verb determiner, verb adverb, verb adjective, all sorts of different combinations. We've got our word wall cards. So the teacher's putting those words on her wall, and sometimes the word will have the symbol, and sometimes the word will not have a symbol. Color code has been taken away so that that's one less hint of what the word is. They don't know what part of speech it is. And then it's actually printed on both sides of the card. So the teacher starts with it on the word wall with the symbol, and as kids are getting better just reading the word, she flips it over so it's only the printed word. Then we know in every activity there's going to be a big book photo. I'll tell you later about the big book, but every kid's going to develop their own big book of words they're learning, and there's a photo that's part of their big book. And there's always going to be a storybook activity that we do, and we're always going to make a collage. So this becomes the poster that evolves. Each day that we do a Word of the Week activity, something new gets added to this big poster. So each time we have a new Word of the Week, a new poster is made. Some teachers like keeping their posters from the previous week displayed around the room. Others think it's just too much. It's cluttering too much. I'll leave maybe 1 or 2 weeks up, but then I got to rotate them off. All right. So our word wall I've already mentioned. They're printed reversible with printed word on one side and word and symbol on the other with no color code. But some of the teachers say, sometimes I put the color code back on when it's just the printed word if a kid is really struggling. So that's a teacher's call on that. We always have our wall chart, so we figure out how are we going to highlight it on the wall chart. And this teacher was using pipe cleaners that she just twisted around and with a bulldog clip highlighted that symbol that they were focusing on, the word go this week. And again, very predictable activities. So I'll walk you through our predictable activities. Monday was always Fun Day Monday, and this is from Miss Maureen's classroom. So Fun Day Monday is when she introduces the symbol, introduces the word, and they add the symbol and the word and the phrase cards onto the poster. That's the only thing that goes on the poster on Fun Day Monday. They maybe sing a song about the word. They're adding it to the wall. Now at this point, it's hardly fun yet. This seems very kind of drill and just practice it. But Fun Day Monday for Miss Maureen always involves some sort of experiential activity, something fun. So that might mean going out on the playground and going outside and going on the slide and going on the merry-go-round and going in the sandbox and going here and going there. And when she started this project, she did not have a core board on her playground, but she has a core board on her playground now. And so on Fun Day Monday, they go out and just have some fun. And while they're doing that, she and her paraprofessional are taking photographs of the kids, taking some video of what the kids are doing. And eventually they'll probably come back into the classroom where she can have them, everybody kind of stable and, calm again. And they start reading sentences that she has pre-created. This is a visual support material she would have created that sort of narrates generically their activity. Like, where will we go? We'll go here, we can go here, or we could go there. And we like to go outside. A question, another question. No, that's the second one's a type, but we could go here or there. That could be a statement or a question. And we like to go outside. So she's not creating sentences like, we go in the sandbox. We go on the slide. More of a story about what we did outside. Then that's it for Monday. Then Tuesday is Tuesday. And Tuesday, as the word choose implies, it's a day of more choice making. So this is where they start creating their class big book. So they have their class big book where they review the narrative, and everybody gets to vote on which sentence do they like the best, and who cares which sentence they vote, but they get to have an opinion and talk about why they like that sentence. So they're putting together their own big book that's got some photos of what they did and their different sentences. Then that's the time, and this is the most labor intensive bit that Maureen and her paraprofessionals have to do, is putting together the kids' personal books. Because at the end of the year, every kid has got a personal big book of core vocabulary that grows throughout the year. And so the pictures that they took of, let's say, Eddie on the playground, he gets to choose which picture he likes. Then he gets to choose a caption that he might go with that picture. Then that copy of what gets created gets sent home. So this takes a little time where he has to pick out his photo and they drop that in there and has to be printed off. This is going to take a little time and a little ink. But that gets sent home. And then in Tuesday, the other choice-making things they can do is where they work on their collage that's going to go on the poster, where they have to find pictures out of all sorts of books and magazines that they can cut apart, where everybody has to choose something that reminds them of go and try to explain why they chose that picture the best that they can. And then everybody has to add one picture to the poster. That goes onto the poster. Okay, then on Penn's Day Wednesday is all about writing and listening to a story. So they listen to the story, the places we will go. So they listen to it, they do a little coloring, they have to cut the letters, they have the word go, and they have to cut the letters apart so they see that it's two distinct letters, and then glue them on their page as their means to write the word. And that's going to all be able to go home with them and go into the big book. Play Day Thursday is a day where they get to do all sorts of play activities, where they might do games. You can choose a game to play with, where they do all sorts of activities where they can get points and win prizes. This is that by Thursday, Maureen is hoping kids have gotten to the part that they can start knowing what their word of the week is. They can start generalizing it. So maybe she's got this activity where they got to use that egg flippy thing, and she's made all these eggs that have different words on the backside, and it's basically kind of a lotto game, and they're trying to find the word of the week, flip these things over, or they do a goldfish thing, or using those Duplo blocks that would have a word of the week on and combine it with other words to build a sentence. So all sorts of fun, predictable activities and points, and that they can earn prizes for how well they're doing with their word of the week. And Friday is my day, Spy Day, My Day, Friday. And on Spy Day, My Day, Friday, this is where they'll say, okay, now we're going to look for our word of our week today in other stuff that we have in our classroom that's symbolized, or other things in our classroom where we have text written. We're going to find it in other bits of our big book. We're going to look for it on our visual schedules. We're going to look through it with different symbolized books that we might have in our classroom. Sometimes Maureen does a scavenger hunt, and she hides the word of the week all over the room, or and that's the Spy Day part of it. Kind of the My Day part of it is they can pick what other activities she has in her class to do. Maybe they want to do a computer activity. But at the end of Spy Day, My Day, Friday, they're also going to review and recap what they've done all week, talk about what they did all week. She's going to build some of that more rigor into the lesson, asking their opinions about what they liked, what they didn't like. And then she will do the reveal of the word of next week. And so they start to guess, can you predict what we might do next week? We have our chart here. What do you think would be a good word to do next week? Starting involving kids in that kind of thinking and problem solving. So if they're choosing the word stop for next week, then she does a little priming where they have their big reveal after they've guessed. They're going to guess about what do you think might be some fun day activities? What do you think we could do to work on stop? And they try to guess the book she might read. Let's look at our bookcase and see if we can figure out a book that would be a good book that has the word stop in it. And it's also the day that parents get informed. Parents, Maureen has done an extraordinary job of keeping her parents in the loop. She informed them at the beginning of the school year what they would be doing, and that they should be expecting, stuff coming home to them every day of the week. This takes time. But on Monday, the big class big book goes home. On Tuesday, the personal page of the big book goes home. Wednesday, they've colored that picture. That's going home to go into their book. Thursday, Maureen sends an e-blast, because that's so easy to do now with our parents. And on Friday, I get another e-blast and a little alert about things coming next week. So there's lots of things you can do, and to get them informed and keep them involved. She asks her teachers, or parents, to send photos back. Send videos what you saw your kid using the word of the week at home. Share your stories with us. Give us your feedback. These little things might be a hook to get a few more parents involved. And Maureen would say, to get them involved, you have to keep them informed, stay the course, do everything you can to get them involved in ways that work for their family structure. So she's used all sorts of different apps, or there's school messaging apps that she could use to keep those parents informed. I share with you from the Wesley School in Muskegon, Michigan. I've been privileged to visit up there, and they do Word of the Week in their special needs program. And they do different things. They do word webs. They have kids make word webs around the word of the week. They have a whole library of books that they've identified. These are the books that are good for the word like and not. And they're the books we're targeting in the month of January. So these are kids with significant challenges, and they're going to get through those two words in the month of January. They also had their bulletin board in the hallway. Well, this bulletin board just kept the whole school informed of this month, what are the words we're working on? And just keeping that at the forefront of the entire school. Then with activity-based instruction, I've covered a bit on activity-based instruction. You can get some really nice activity planners I've given you a handout, and it's in your folder of resources. You could also get some really good planners from Assistiveware. But again, you're following a master plan. You know, what are the words we're going to learn throughout the year, and make sure we've got a way that we're systematically covering all of them. So you can take a look at some of these examples. This is an example and a lesson plan put together for working on the activities making a smoothie. We have our target vocabulary of, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 7 different words. And in doing the activity, this teacher has scripted a beginning, a middle, and an end so that they could make sure that there was a routine to every script. In this script, everything always starts by being hidden in a bag so that kids will ask what's in the bag and explore. Then the middle section is actually the activity, and the end section is discussing and commenting on the activity. Again, trying to build in some of that increased rigor in the activity. So that's an example for you. I'm sorry I don't have time to show these 2 videos, but this is Robin. Robin is an adult. I did an activity-based instruction with her, and her impression of the instruction was that I needed to move it along a little faster. And she gave me some really great feedback that reminded me that you can't teach too many words in an activity. Keep your focus somewhere between 1 and 3 or 4. Keep it moving along. That activity of making a smoothie with her took me 45 minutes. And I know most people don't have 45 minutes. So you have to pick and choose what you have to target that day when you're doing the activity to make sure everybody gets enough practice and kids aren't waiting around an awfully long time while you're doing something with everybody else in the activity. Here's a resource for you. It's available at my website. I don't know if I put it in the Dropbox or not. I don't think I did, but it is at my website. There's recipes that have been kind of broken down a little bit there so that each step in the recipe, there are some simplified instructions that kids can direct people in making the activity. So you can take a look at, they did cooking a lot at the Wesley School. Please read through some of these activity-based instruction challenges. I would say the biggest challenge with activity-based instruction is variety. People get stuck in a rut. They say, well, we do a lot of cooking in our classes, and I bet you do in special need classes. And you tend to focus on the same words over and over and over. So we have to make sure that we're working our plan, that we have our master list, and with all the different activities you're doing with lots of repetition, you're not just using the same 5 to 15 words all year long. So take a look at that. You're just gonna have to look at parts of speech and grammar rocks. I hope this is quite self-explanatory. These are my grammar rocks boxes. You can look at what's in a box. Same with semantic mapping. This is how I might make a semantic map of the words that work off a specific icon and the process of that. Again, this could be for me another 90 minutes. And take a look also at stepping up and tier-based instruction, which is probably above where a lot of your kids are right now, as well as pass the class. So after our break, we're going to come back and start looking more at some of the syntax strategies and doing things with specific vocabulary instruction to take us towards syntax and putting words together. Woo! Okay, sorry, I ran behind on that. I apologize, but that's the end of this next part, so here's your code for that.